Welcome back. We are Geeks Not Nerds. I am once again Captain Logan.
I'm Eric.
And today Eric and I are going to talk about a thing that we keep talking about constantly in our private lives, so we thought we would just chat about it on camera. And this is a thing Eric really wanted to talk about. Today Eric and I are going to talk about not just the streaming model of television, but more specifically, and this is a thing that transcends that also into cable, or I guess began in cable and goes to streaming. We're going to talk about the really deliberate pacing model that we're seeing for a lot of dramas right now, again, in cable and streaming. And we're going to talk about when it works and when it doesn't, and the fact that we both think that it's being used a lot as a crutch right now, where we pretend like if something is really slow-paced, it means that it's a really well-told story. So we'll talk about that. We'll throw out some examples of ways this is done well and ways this is done really poorly. And Eric, I want to start with the fact that you've not watched Punisher yet.
Yes. It's part of this.
I want to ask you, Are you finding yourself not wanting to, or not able to commit yourself to watching a lot of things just because of this pacing thing, even if they end up being really good?
Yeah.
And is it because it's a dice throw where you're not sure if it's going to be really, really good or really bad, or is it more just because you're kind of tired of the molasses?
I'm tired of the molasses.
Yeah.
I'm tired of shows where an episode ends with a major plot point, revelation, or cliffhanger, and then the next episode spends the entire episode before we finally... It's like only the last 10 minutes of every episode matter. That's when we finally resolve what we started last episode. That's not how you tell a story. That's not... That's bogus. I'm tired of shows that have a really killer, fast-paced first episode, and then have 6 episodes you have to slog through before something finally happens.
And I should say, we're not finished at the time of this recording with the second season of Jessica Jones yet, but it has that.
A little bit.
I like that. I'm liking that season so far quite a bit.
Me too.
And I'm finding it unpredictable, and it's already surprised me quite a bit, and I'm really invested, but I was really impressed with the kind of movie-style pacing that first episode had, and it had me really engaged and wanting to keep going, and never again. I don't mean that I'm not engaged.
No, this is the thing with a lot of series is they'll pull out all stops for the first episode to get you invested, and then they just take their time with the rest of the show.
And I know what some folks might be thinking when I say that. They might be thinking, well, like in Medias Res, that's how you have a good start out the gate. You want that to keep going, and then sometimes it makes sense to have something that's really deliberately paced. And this is a case-by-case issue. I could turn back around and say this is the only way to tell that story. I've not finished it yet. Mm-hmm. I'm in the middle. Mm-hmm. But I tend to think, and I thought this with Punisher, and I know some folks in the comments when Vince and I reviewed that didn't agree with me, and that's fine, but I think that the real issue here is that we have especially with the Marvel shows, let's just specifically talk about that for a minute. Mm-hmm. There's this, with the exception of Defenders, 13-episode model that they all have to hold to for, as far as I can tell, no real good reason, except that's the arbitrary number we chose. Mm-hmm. Why don't you just let it be the length it needs to be? Here's the thing. If it doesn't have to be rigidly, every episode, the same number of minutes, some of them are 49, some of them are 55, why does it have to rigidly be the same number of episodes? How about we just make it the number it needs to be to tell that story? Jessica Jones Season 1 could have been told in 10.
I think so.
Punisher Season 2, maybe could have... No, 1 needs to be the length it is.
Okay.
But I think, I think the deliberate pacing actually helps that a lot.
Well, you said Punisher. Are you talking about Daredevil?
Did I say Punisher?
You said Punisher Season 2.
Pardon me. Daredevil Season 2, I think, could have been 1 or 2 less, maybe. Obviously, the Iron Fist should have been a movie. Et cetera, et cetera. There are only a couple of seasons of these shows, and Luke Cage should have been 2 different seasons.
Yeah, Luke Cage should have been a 7-episode season.
There's only so many of these seasons where this pacing has actually worked, and it helped Defenders to some degree, although even that seemed like a slog to me in places, and it was only as short as it was, as far as I can tell, for budgetary reasons.
I
may have just said everything I have to say about this topic.
One of the big problems seems to be the episode count doesn't actually matter. What I mean by that is, no matter how many episodes they will be given, they will stretch it.
Yeah.
So, you don't watch Game of Thrones, and I'm not caught up, but I know a lot of people that watch Game of Thrones. One of the biggest complaints for the past 3 or 4 seasons has been how slow it is.
Well, and that's all you hear about Walking Dead.
Part of that's because they ran out of books, and they're just kind of making stuff up. And,
Yeah.
And I know people that... It seems like if you read the books, after they start deviating, you hate that show. Everyone that reads the books... The TV show after they start deviating is like McDonald's Game of Thrones. Like, it loses everything. But,
wow.
So their last 2 seasons, or their last season, it's 2 6-episode seasons? With 6 episodes, all I heard people say was, it's taking so long for anything to happen.
And like I said, you hear that about Walking Dead all the time, too.
Yeah.
Except that happened with that show, I think, a lot earlier. I've never watched either of them. I'm just reporting what people have told me.
Here's what I think the biggest problem is and the easiest fix for it.
Yeah.
The biggest problem is they want to tell this real, mature, decompressed kind of a story where you really get to know the characters. But they do not ever want to be...
massive amounts of tension in a lot of scenes. And
they never want to be episodic. I think the easy fix for this is every once in a while, have a standalone episode where you get what you need character-wise, so it doesn't feel like you wasted my time. So, like, instead of having nothing happen for an episode except for one thing that a character decides, just make it a standalone piece that works within the whole.
Yeah.
Right? Like it feels like they don't actually have enough story for however many episodes they're ever allotted. They never have enough story for it. You can pad that out. It's called filler for a reason. Like, you can pad that out with stories that are good and well written and move the characters forward, but don't need to actually inform the plot of the season.
Yeah, and the thing is, some people will disagree with you and say that's a bad idea because it's not televised and you're binging it, so why should I have to, in the middle of the story, see everything halt and then get back to the main story? But the thing is, filler episodes don't always feel like filler episodes. There's this great episode in Breaking Bad, and Breaking Bad doesn't have a whole lot of things that I would describe as filler episodes, but every now and again, there's downtime. Real life is this way, where just everything stops and there's not anything going on for a while. Then you can just skip ahead, but a lot of these shows, Breaking Bad included, are things that, even though it takes maybe a year to broadcast the show, or however long it does, it's 10, 13 episodes, and then you have time before you come back. It's only 2 or 3 months or less into the actual show. Lost was this way. So if you don't want to jump ahead, like if you don't want to have a lot of time jumps, it makes sense and it feels more believable when you have an occasional episode like you're talking about where we do a character study. And there's this great episode of Breaking Bad where the entire episode is just these 2 guys in the big meth lab trying to kill a fly, because Walter White is obsessed with not having decontamination, and he fixates on it, and he gets obnoxious about it. The whole episode is just them trying to catch this fly, and it's great. But some people with a streaming show, and I think it's easier to get away with that on something like HBO or AMC, because it is coming out weekly. I think some people would complain that it's being interrupted.
I think we're now seeing this problem of...
But if you look at, to your point, real quick, if you look at the forest for the trees, you realize that if you allow those things because you're stuck with a rigid episode order, if you're stuck with that, then if you take those episodes out, and maybe you can't, but if you take those episodes out, you realize that it's not stretched because you did that.
Yeah.
I think a much better fix is to simply make it the number of episodes it needs to be, and no longer.
I think one of the biggest problems is just the streaming model in general.
Yeah.
Because you're not viewing it as episodes. You're releasing it as episodes, but all at once, and you're expecting people to watch it all together. So you're not thinking about it. You're not even thinking about it. I don't even think fully as chapters. You're thinking about it as a 13-hour movie. One of the best shows I'm watching right now, not currently because it's in between seasons, but one of the best shows coming out right now is Ash vs. Evil Dead. Ash vs. Evil Dead is an overarching season plot, but each episode is its own little episode. You know how we used to do comic books like that?
Yeah.
And then we moved to the trade format where like every story must be like 6 to 8 issues? It's like that. Where like each episode is its own self-contained 3-act little piece. And then it also fits into the larger whole. We need to be looking at that. We need to be doing that. Because what happens is...
Or if it's just... Because here's the thing. I'm going to disagree with you if you think that's how they should all be done.
I'm not saying that,
because...
But I think more of these shows should be done like that.
But I also think that... Well, and especially... Like, use a good comic model for comic book shows.
Yeah.
But for some of these other things, with like a Game of Thrones, I think Breaking Bad is one of the best examples of doing this right.
Mm-hmm.
Breaking Bad didn't have the same episode count for every season. I mean, I think most of those seasons were just the number of episodes they thought they had to be.
Well, and that's a lot of British TV shows.
Yeah. I think it makes sense, even for ongoing shows, to sometimes do a miniseries kind of format, where it is a however many hour movie it is, but if you're going to do that on something like Netflix, don't have intros every episode. Like make it clear what it is, because I can't tell sometimes if those are supposed to be episodic or not. And when I say that, I realize that because sometimes people go, well, it's obviously not episodic if it's serialized. No, it can be both.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to know if there's supposed to be any kind of component. I mean, the fact that we still buy single-issue comics separately as their own piece means they should read like a chapter.
Mm-hmm. I mean, 7 episodes in, I am liking Jessica Jones. I'm going to be hard-pressed to not say it should have been at least half its length.
Yeah.
And I feel like I say that at the end of every one of these shows. And it's like, it could have been half the length. It could have been 3 episodes less.
I've talked to at least 3 or 4 people that have all used the word meandering.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of these shows feels like. It feels like they don't actually have a story that can stretch the number of episodes they have, and they know that. So somewhere in the middle, we'll just kind of have the character go on some version of of journey quest, a vision quest kind of thing. It's just like, well, it's smart and sophisticated. You're learning about the characters, but nothing's happening.
Yeah. And are you really learning anything? And
yeah.
Are they progressing?
And is any of the things I'm learning enhanced the story that's actually being told?
Yeah, because when you say nothing is happening, importantly, I always have to, whenever anybody says that, I always have to stop everything and say, yeah, but stories aren't just about plot.
No, absolutely. But
if you do a real character study, and then what that character either learns or, everybody say it with me, refuses to learn, moving forward actually affects the story, actually progresses the narrative later, you're going to be really glad that you had that.
Yeah.
And it might feel necessary, and it might break up the monotony too. I think Iron Fist is obviously the worst offender of this. I think Iron Fist...
I've never seen it as bad as Iron Fist.
Decided, in having no idea what story it wanted to tell and how to tell it, it would just take itself really, really, really seriously and be really super slow, and then people would buy into it being a really smart, serious show, because that's what those look like. Mm. That's the really, superficial, example of that, I think.
Well, and we said while we were watching it, this is the textbook example of, okay, now this kind of storytelling, it used to be done by people trying to tell sophisticated stories. Now it is now it's a formula. This is how you tell these shows, and
I don't think they all have to be done that way. I think that they could have a character, and again, I felt like this with Punisher was just it was just a lot slower than it needed to be. In my opinion, they are at some point are going to have a character that is not at all served by that. Iron Fist might have been that character, but that show is so poorly written and poorly made, I can't tell how much of it's the character and how much of it is just the if that team had made anything, it might have looked like that, at least to some degree, or made anything that they weren't excited about and didn't understand, because that just reeks of, I don't understand this property.
Yeah.
But it's a kung fu thing. You would expect something a little bit faster paced. Iron Fist maybe should have been the first show they made that was 6 or 7 episodes.
Also, potentially, looking at comics, maybe do a couple arcs. Maybe you get 13 episodes. You don't have to tell a 13-episode story.
Well, and let's give props to Luke Cage for attempting that.
Yes.
Even though the back half, because the back half, it wasn't the story they were telling. It was more just kind of plot holes and things that where I just wasn't really with it and didn't know that things that they were doing really made sense. But it wasn't a bad story per se.
Yeah, why? But like, why can't we just do like 2 4-episode arcs and a 5-episode arc, and you get? I feel like you'd feel like you're getting more done. Or
in its 3rd season.
Or look at.
Was it 3rd season?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where they do 2.
And that back half is.
Yeah.
I mean, the first part of that is insane. The back half, in comparison, way better.
Yeah. That's when I quit. Or like we should always. I feel like England's had this figured out for so long. Like going back to the 70s, they have like 6-episode seasons for like really smart shows. But like, look at something like Sherlock, where they're 3-episode seasons, but each episode is like an hour and a half. Like, we're later.
But some people would say we've progressed a little bit. We're late to the party, but we figured this out to the point where everything doesn't have to be 22 episodes.
No, that's true. But now everything has to be
slashed
12 or 13.
it. Yeah.
But
the thing people need to remember is that British TV was doing that shorter model with things that were episodic.
Yes.
With things that were standalone or anthology.
Yep, because that's Spaced is, I think the first season is 8 and the second season is 6. That's a sitcom.
Yeah, Blackadder was that way.
Yeah.
It's 12 or 13.
Yeah,
whatever it is.
It's
been eons. I think that's right.
We're going to talk later when we get to the news about format for a different medium.
Yeah.
But we need to stop being so rigid. We need to let a story take as long or as short as a story needs to take. And forcing things into a bubble, because so we move from 22.
And we're out of time, so we got to go
okay,
territory. Go ahead.
Real quick. Moving from 22 to 22 to 24 to 10 to 12 or 10 to 13. When you look at those 24-episode shows, those 22-episode shows, it's not half of its plot episodes and the other half are like filler. I think a lot of people think that's like we removed the filler half.
Yeah.
When you go look at Buffy or X-Files, it's not like half of that season is just all plot and the other half is just all...
No, we've oversimplified it. It's that you have an overarching story that's being slowly progressed through a bunch of single one-and-done adventures, which, once again, is kind of more like how real life works.
Yeah. There's not one thing that's just constantly trending through your life for a year. It's a thing that might keep coming up, but there's other things that happen in between that.
Yeah. So this will be my final thought. So a TV show that wants to not be anthology or just a bunch of fun adventures with the same characters, and wants to tell one story from start to finish with nothing else in between, it needs to decide if it's a novel or if it's a novella. Because if it's a novella, it needs to be shorter. Mm-hmm. So the question you should immediately ask yourself when you start, when you get in your writer's room and you start characterizing, you start plotting, is why can't this story be a movie?
Mm-hmm.
And if it could be a movie, then you either, if you are capable, and most of the time you aren't, make a movie, or if you're there to make a TV show, then you make a TV show and you tell a story that requires more landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you agree?
No, I agree completely.
And then if it's and then like if you have a really complex interwoven kind of novel length thing. I mean, and some of the time this is about time. I mean, not always, but I don't want to oversimplify this. But to some degree, it's kind of it can just be about how much time passes. I mean, like usually, when I was in college, when I was in writer school, we were told that usually a short story shouldn't be more than a couple days to a week of length. Mm. And if you have a season of television that only takes place over a week, it better be really dense, right? Mm. Like most novels, there's more time that passes than that.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Not always. It just depends on how complex it is. It depends on subplots. I mean, it depends on a lot of different things. But
and a lot of...
That was my final thought.
But and a lot
sorry.
A lot of... I mean, this is a problem with books in general, but like books used to be shorter. So like a lot of stuff that were novels were like 200 pages, 250 pages.
Sure.
And I think we're having the same thing in television, where it's like, you could do this in 8 episodes.
Well,
why are you taking...
other media affects novels? This is a whole other topic.
Yeah.
But you have the issue of attention span and people wanting their novel reading experience to feel more like a movie watching experience. Ergo, you have a lot of writers where, even though a lot of books are really super freaking long now, we have to make sure that 1,000,001 things happen in our books so that we don't lose interest, and you can't spend as much time. I mean, we overcompensate in both directions. Either we spend way too much time describing things, or we don't give you anything. And I think that's because of, partly at least, because of extra media.
Well, and it's also
affects people's perceptions of prose.
I guess this is my final point. It's not my summary point. I think I've said
this
everything.
This was not
a
topic I expected we would have difficulty getting into the 15-minute format. It's interesting.
One of the things that doesn't work with the current, wanting to be a novel on television is you can do a lot of stuff in a novel that doesn't progress plot but progresses character because you're allowed to be in their head.
Right.
You're not allowed to be in these people's head. Even voiceover narration is not the same thing as being in the character's head.
Right.
You're not actually in their head. You're still getting the surface, what the actor is able to express to you from a lot of really mundane things that are supposed to be major character things. And maybe it would be in a novel if I was in that character's head, but it feels like it's wasting a lot of time.
Well, that's why it becomes so really important. I mean, this is always important, but almost more so with that format on television and on screen in general, where you have to make sure that your characters have a lot of distinguishing details, and that you couldn't mix them up with some other person. I mean, they have to be a really distinct person. Because that's the only way that you can get more in their head. I mean, I still marvel, I brought this up earlier, I still marvel at Breaking Bad for having these, 10-minute scenes where nothing is happening, but I'm so riveted. How do you explain that? And it feels like you're reading a novel, even though there's no voiceover narration. They never do that in that show.
So, I guess, summary thoughts is, I really wish, I feel like we looked at a format that was crippling, and we said, well, we can tell tighter stories. And now we've turned that into a crippling format, and really what all we need is for a lot of people to just think outside the box and be like, okay, so if I have to do 13 episodes, I'll do 3 stories, or I'll do 2 stories, or,
if you have more freedom, just make it the number of episodes you need.
I'll make it 8 episodes, I'll make it 6 episodes, I'll make it 4 episodes.
Yeah.
Not Castlevania. That was bull. Yeah. But that needed more episodes. But yeah, it's just.
But they're not making a TV show; they're making a long movie.
Yeah, and
I mean, anyway, there's no way around that, right? Any way you slice it, that is a movie.
I would also like to throw out the suggestion of maybe the half-hour format's not so bad. Maybe you don't need an hour. You want 13 episodes?
And later on in Crisis, we'll talk about Tick, and it does that brilliantly.
Yep. And some of those episodes feel like an hour in a good way.
Can't believe that it was only 25 minutes. Yeah. Well, Eric, let's go on to rants.
All right.
What would you like to rant about today, sir?
I actually wrote a rant down earlier.
You're so prepared today.
Sure. That's what we'll call it.
That was sarcasm.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
We're already 12 seconds into your rant, sir.
So I may have talked about this before. I don't think so. I think this is the first time I've ever talked about this.
But when you have a rant, you have the floor, man. If you want to go back to something, round 2, you knock yourself out.
Well, because the rant is just the point. So I don't want to be redundant, but this is a thing, I don't know if you even remember this, but it's something that stuck with me for forever.
Okay.
And I think this will be the last time we're on video before Easter happens.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about Easter.
Which is also April Fool's Day this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. Okay.
And that will not be an April Fool's Day prank. Just the fact that it is Easter.
So I'm going to complain about the Easter Bunny.
Okay.
Do you remember us having this conversation?
I vaguely. Okay. I think I know where you're going to go with this.
There's a conversation because for the first time
from years ago.
For the first time,
right?
maybe yes.
On the phone, 2012 or something.
Yes. For the first time, maybe ever, I'm going to present a rant and then a solution. The Easter Bunny is dumb, and we need to get rid of him. So
you still feel the same way you did?
Yes. So Easter falls under a weird thing where it is both a Christian holiday that has adopted pagan rituals into it. But we didn't alchemically bind this all together. I have had people try to explain to me through Christian symbolism how the rabbit and the eggs work, and
they're just making stuff up.
And they're just making stuff up. And I've heard different things from different people. And the rabbit and the eggs don't go together. They just don't. Rabbits don't lay eggs.
Well, I don't see how any of that is Christian.
It's not. It all comes from the pagan Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know how you even finagle that to be
spring solstice or something like that.
To Christianity. Like, I don't have a problem that with like churches having kids do Easter egg hunts on Easter. Like, it's just part of the culture. Whatever.
But the Easter Bunny and the eggs don't make sense together. Bunnies do not lay eggs.
Right. They sure don't.
And both within the Christian and the secular, I've had people try to explain to me the Easter Bunny and the eggs, and really what it is we made a stew, right? We threw a bunch of different traditions from a bunch of different faiths, and we just made a holiday.
It's really a bunny and the egg issue.
Yeah. So, I think it's dumb.
Which came first, Eric, the bunny or the egg? I don't know. I can't answer that.
Also, mini rant, Easter, not a present holiday. Candy, small presents. It's not Christmas too. Just putting that out there. So I think the Easter Bunny is really dumb. I really don't. Also, the Easter Bunny is way scarier than Santa. Santa breaks into your house and leaves you presents. The Easter Bunny breaks into your house and hides things, and that's terrifying. So years ago, Cap and I were having this discussion. We fixed all of this. We created.
I don't even remember how we did it.
I don't know. It just kind of got there. So we created.
But I mean, you still remember what it was?
I do.
Oh, good. I don't remember it anymore.
Okay.
No.
So there is an animal.
Oh, it's the Easter Phoenix.
It's the Easter Phoenix.
Easter Phoenix.
It's the Easter Phoenix. The Easter Phoenix is a mythological creature.
I haven't thought about this in 6 years.
That lays eggs and comes back from the dead.
Yes.
It fits with the Christian thing and the pagan thing and the egg thing, and it should be a phoenix.
Yeah.
The thing that breaks in your house and hides the eggs should be a phoenix.
And death and resurrection.
Death and resurrection.
That's yep. Jesus Christ. That's Easter.
Yep.
Come on, it's perfect!
It should be the Easter Phoenix.
Perfect.
Let's get rid of the Easter Bunny, raise your kids with the Easter Phoenix.
I think part of the reason we never brought it up before is because we didn't want anybody to steal it. It's like such a good idea. So nobody steal that. That's ours.
But raise your kids on it.
If that ever becomes a... that's fine. Oh, man, we should work on this, and like, we got 2 weeks, man. We will tell my children the Easter Phoenix story. That was delightful. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I forgot all about that. No, because I remember we had a thing with Easter, and I remember like the Easter Bunny is dumb conversation, but I had forgotten about the Easter Phoenix. It's perfect. Okay. So wow, you blindsided me with that. All right. So that's one of my favorite rants of all time. So this is a rant that I meant to do forever, that Eric and I will not stop complaining about, and I debated about whether or not I wanted to talk about this on the channel, and I've decided, it irritates me so much that I'm gonna do another like bad things businesses do.
I know what this is.
Like restaurants and retail places and stuff. Every now and again, I'll go to this place because there's a whole lot of like. This isn't in the like forcing loyalty category, but it feels like it's in the same spirit of that, where we're just like trying to sort of manipulate people in sometimes just by treating them like they're stupid, and sometimes by guilt tripping them. And this is a guilt trip thing. So Panera, and I love Panera.
It's this one.
No, it's this one.
Oh, okay.
And I don't want to throw them under the bus because I like them, and there may be some other restaurants and other places doing this, but I've not been to one yet. I'm waiting for a haircut place to do it. That's the next thing where I'm expecting this, Eric. So Panera is doing this thing now that I like to call the guilt trip tip generator. You go to the keypad when you swipe your credit card, and the very next thing after you swipe your credit card is they put up in front of you a chart of numbers of tips that you can give.
10%, 20%, 30%.
Yeah, and the person that just checked you out is watching you do this, and it feels
because
like
it's flat.
Yeah,
it's not up like
this.
It's
see
flat.
It. Yeah, and so it feels like it's hoping to put you in an awkward situation where you feel like you're being a jerk face if you don't tip the person that just checked you out. Now, part of the reason it irritates me at Panera is that's not a place that makes sense to tip.
No, because those aren't people. Tipping is for waiters and waitresses because they make less than minimum wage and they make their money off tips.
Now, there's a weird loophole thing where it's sort of like a coffee shop and people tip a little bit at coffee shops, but I don't think of Panera as really that kind of place, and B, the traditional and I think right way to do that is you have an unofficial tip jar that just sits there, and you can do that or not. It should not be the same thing as when you get pizza delivered or when you have a waiter at a restaurant. There is a tip thing under your total, and then you write the tip in because it's expected that there's gratuity. Even if gratuity were expected at Panera, and I don't understand why, put it on the receipt then, like those places. And I'm still going to raise an eyebrow at it, but it at least, I at least feel like I have some privacy in whether or not I do that. And I'm not saying that I've ever been treated differently at Panera because I didn't do that.
No, but it's the, like,
they probably,
feeling.
most of those people probably think it's as dumb as we do. But
Well, let's be honest, right? Like, it's just a company making excuses for how little they pay their employees.
and trying to come up with ways to get a little bit more money, yeah.
Yeah, but without them having to pay for it.
Well, and you also can't be sure how the tips work at that store, right? They could be sharing it through all the employees. If they're being paid minimum wage or better, I don't know how Panera pays.
Also, a tip is
I'm
not...
sure they are. But hear me out. They might even not give them all of it. They might take a percentage of it. You don't know.
And a tip's not standard. A tip is given at the end of something.
Yeah.
Based on quality and performance. Why am I tipping when I
haven't
pay
even
up front?
eaten yet.
Yeah, maybe you screwed up my entire meal like 3 times.
Yeah.
I want to take that tip back. I tipped, which I didn't.
When you get a pizza or a sandwich delivered, you know how long it took, and you can look at it and see if it's cold, and see if your order looks right, and then you tip the driver for driving it to you. You know, you don't give a waiter a tip until you're finished with the meal. No, that's a really good point. That doesn't make sense either. My main gripe is that it's there up front.
And it's really uncomfortable.
It's really uncomfortable.
I always feel like they're judging me. I mean, I feel like everyone's judging me all the time, but specifically in that moment.
And again, to be fair, I don't think they are. I've never actually felt that way about the person I was talking to past the first one. But it's hard not to wonder about it. Yeah, that's wrong. I don't like it. I'm interested later to find out what rant you thought I was going to do.
I just thought you were going to do loyalty.
Oh, yeah, I need to talk more about that.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid I'll run off with myself and just lose it. I hate loyalty cards at retail places. I think it's destroying retail in mass, and I think we should all join together. I can't believe I'm saying this on camera. This is almost too far into going into like a political thing, and it's not really politics, but it's just I'm so mad about it. I almost want to start a movement about it. I'll talk about this more at some point.
I hope you like Amazon, because in 20 years that is all we will have.
That's all, yeah.
And they will no longer discount, because they will be the only game in town.
Well, folks, thanks a lot for watching Geeks Not Nerds. We sure appreciate it. We're going to move on now with the Omnibus, but if you're watching this as its own separate video, we sure appreciate it.